Hello there, Johannes of Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting. Today, you may notice some new surroundings. I am actually in the whiskey library rather than the whiskey parlor, and that is mainly because my furnace has gone out in the whiskey parlor, and it feels more like a shed out in the back, my own little private whiskey bothy, and instead of blowing out smoke while I'm talking, I figured I'd just move upstairs and actually do a review from up here where the warm temperatures rise to. So it's a day of celebration for me. It is the day of the release of Experiencing Irish Whiskey, the book that I wrote because I traveled over to Ireland and went to 44 distilleries in the period of just a mere 24 days to learn everything I could learn about Irish whiskey. And today I'm going to impart some knowledge to you, and that knowledge will be kind of a top 5 of the whiskeys that really have stimulated my interest in Irish whiskey, and also to talk about a couple of the distilleries that I went to, give you a little background on whiskey travel and all of that, because that's really what this book is all about, is teaching you how to do a Irish whiskey tour, how to plan it all out. If you're coming from Europe or the US, how to drive on the left side of the road, how to deal with hotels and the lack of them in Ireland, and different strategies you may have for going between distilleries, all that sort of stuff, but also talking about all the main distilleries. And so in the book, I actually feature 27 distilleries that are up and running 100%. You can book online. Actually, I take that back, 26, because Donegal right now is doing some reconstruction, so they're a little bit delayed, but they got a 2-page profile as well. And then 24 additional distillery projects, or things that really aren't distilleries you could go to. Great Northern is a good example. I want you to know where all the whiskey is coming from in Ireland. I want you to stop having that mysterious look on your face when you go into a store and see that growing Irish whiskey section and say, what is this stuff and where should I start and all of that. So I'm going to give you 5 whiskeys today to talk about and give you a little bit of my journey into Irish whiskey, and then talk about some of the distillery experiences that you can expect if you decide to plan a trip in that direction. So for me, Irish whiskey was not something I was very interested in at all. Scotch drinker, bourbon drinker, starting to get into rye, but Irish was kind of low on the totem pole for me. And that was mainly because I wasn't a fan of Jameson. I wasn't really digging what I was tasting from Bushmills. I had the Black Bush and I had the regular Bushmills, but I didn't really dive any deeper into their single malts and all the rest. So my opinion of Irish whiskey was, it's all blends and there's probably not that much out there that I'm overly excited in. Now, I did have Redbreast 12, but I was not overly impressed with it. I don't know, it just wasn't hitting my palate quite right. So if you're talking about the elite Irish whiskey, which Redbreast is often referred to as being, and I wasn't really digging it, it kind of had me shunning the whole category. And today you see me with a book beside me. So something changed my mind about Irish whiskey. Well, what did change my mind was taking this crazy trip where I spent those 24 days in a car, basically seeing Ireland as I was driving by it, really not taking much time off, and just going distillery to distillery to distillery, and really getting a feel for the entire industry and where it's at. And so the first place I was really excited about going to was Slane, because Slane is the first blended Irish whiskey that I tried that I went, wow, I really like that. Now, this is a special edition. This is the one where they age a little extra in virgin oak casks, but just really impressed me with the flavor. And the thing is that, like Jameson and Bushmills, they have this little, what I call a fuel note to them that kind of turns me off. And so I was thinking, is all Irish whiskey like that? And this was the first Irish whiskey that I had that I said, whoa, that's a tasty whiskey, and it's actually a great price point on it and worth trying out. So I went to Slane. It's Slane Castle. So when you go on a tour there, you are going to the old horse stables. They built a distillery into the horse stables, and then you can also plan out and maybe go on a tour of the castle as well as a separate thing. But really, really enjoyed that. I did a Whiskey Lore interviews with Alex of Slane, and really got a lot of the background information out of it. I had a great day there just learning all about Slane. So that was the one that got me going, okay, maybe I shouldn't judge every single Irish whiskey on the same level. The second one was one that I walked into a store and I said, I'd like an Irish whiskey, but I don't necessarily, I want one that's different. Just give me one that's different, you know? I don't know that I necessarily want a blend, but I mean, if it's a blend and it's a really good blend, then let's go for it. So what I was given was not the regular Writer's Tears, but this is the Double Oak Writer's Tears. And this has two oaks and two styles of premium Irish whiskey. So they age this in bourbon barrels and French oak cognac casks. And as I understand, this is a single malt and a single pot still that they use to make this. Now, I was excited when I went over there because I said, you know what, I can't wait to go to the distillery that has Writer's Tears. Well, Writer's Tears juice actually comes from Middleton. So, and I think Bushmills as well. So it's really an amalgamation of the two distilleries that I'm like, I'm not necessarily a huge fan, but boy, really good whiskey there. I love the Double Oak. I actually haven't had the Copper Pot, but the complexity in this whiskey is what sold me and made me go, okay, Irish whiskey is a little deeper than I'm giving it credit for. So no distillery to go see this at. The distillery that was initially sort of in the plans was the Royal Oak Distillery, which I did get a chance to go to, but that's a behind the scenes tour. They don't really have a regular tour schedule at this point, and I write up about it in the book and give the details of, the idea that they will someday maybe do tours again. It's a great distillery, but that they make the Busker. So the Busker is what they make, and Writer's Tears is independent and off in its own direction. Now, while I was doing my tour around Ireland, I fell in love with the pot still style. Absolutely fascinating. I call it Ireland's secret weapon because single malt, and this is how I was taking Irish whiskey before I came in, and I've heard this from other people. I said, but when they start doing a lot of single malts, I will probably start respecting it more. Well, here's the thing. After I toured Ireland, I felt like that was the dumbest statement I could possibly make. Mainly because as I traveled around Ireland, I was tasting pot still whiskey. Pot still whiskey, like Redbreast, is a whiskey that is made sort of like a single malt. It's 100% malted barley, or it can be 90% malted barley. The thing is that what they do is they use at least 30% malted barley, 30% unmalted barley, 5% of something else, and then they fill in the rest with malted or unmalted. And nobody in Scotland is doing that. Talnua is the only distillery in the US that's doing it at the moment that I'm aware of. And what pot still whiskey is like is it gives you, I call it the graham cracker effect, a bit of that honey grain note coming in, a little peppery finish on it, and very nice oily mouthfeel. And after I went back and tasted Redbreast afterwards, I'm like, you know what, it's not giving me all the stuff I want out of a pot still whiskey. So when I got back to the United States, I'm looking on my shelves to try to find a pot still whiskey that I'm going to fall in love with. And I thought, I need to find one that's younger. And it'd be really interesting to find one that's younger and could give me sort of a sense of what Redbreast might be like if it was younger than 12 years. Because like peated whiskey, like rye whiskey, I have an assumption that will be proven or unproven over time that pot still whiskey is actually better at probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years rather than going all the way to 12 years, because the oiliness, the flavors that you get out of it, I really don't care about the cask having a lot of influence on it. I'm not interested in it being mellowed down. I want a full-bodied, really nice whiskey to drink. So when I got back, I got obsessed about trying to find a pot still whiskey, and this is the one I ended up getting. That I don't think this is necessarily the whiskey that I'm going to end up going to. It won't be my go-to pot still whiskey from a standpoint of what I'm looking for in terms of flavor notes. But it is the most drinkable whiskey I think I have ever bought. And it's not playing off the word smooth, because I don't necessarily consider this to be a smooth whiskey. It's just a really nice, complete whiskey that is easy to drink. It has a lot of interesting flavors to it. It doesn't overly challenge you, but it is just a really nice drinking whiskey. And that is the Powers 3 Swallow, which, as I understand, is about a 6-year-old pot still. And it's just a really nice whiskey. You can tell, I mean, I haven't had this bottle for very long, but I can tell you that most of this bottle was consumed, one, in a conversation with my brother on the phone for a couple hours, and another big chunk of it came out of here the other night when I was on the Cellarman Bali Whiskey Wednesday, where a bunch of us just sit around and chat on video about stuff. And I just kept pouring a little more and pouring a little more. I'm like, man, this stuff just hits the spot. It is just a really, really nice drinking whiskey. So there you go. And it comes out of Old Middleton, which is the distillery that Jameson comes out of, and part of at one time, the same company as Bushmills. So then, while I was on this trip, I was in Northern Ireland, and Sarah from McConnell's, and if you go back and listen to our podcast episode on Whiskey Lore, the interviews, Sarah Kennedy, she is the one that really started to introduce me to the history of Irish whiskey and broke it down. And so if you're curious, that's a really good place to start, or read my 7-page Irish whiskey history in here. And so she got me really curious, but she also talked a lot about Belfast. And now there's going to be 2 distilleries in Belfast, whereas up till now, there's not been a distillery in Belfast since I've forgotten the name of it, but the distillery that made Old Comer, the Comer distillery, and also the Dunbill distillery, Royal Distillers, I think it was. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at my notes. But anyway, it's been a long time since they've had distilling there, and now all of a sudden you've got 2 new distilleries coming in, which I write about both. McConnell's will be interesting because that's going to be in an old jail where during the Troubles they used to tuck people away, and the other one is associated with the location is associated with one of the biggest blockbuster movies in the history of movies. And so I'm not going to go any further than that. You probably know. You can guess down below if you want to. It's in Belfast. And it's associated with a movie. So those who know the Irish whiskey, or those who know nautical history, or are into movies, you'll get it. So while Sarah and I were chatting, we were in this really cool pub having a Guinness, best Guinness I've ever had in my life. Belfast is the best place to get a Guinness. I will tell you that. I've had it at St. James Gate in Dublin. That was the worst one that I had. It was too bitter. But the one that I had at, is it Brittles? I think it's Brittles. It's in a Flatiron building, and very interesting pub to go into, and busy, and the owner may be slightly aggressive, but believe me, it's worth it. Get yourself a Guinness while you're in there. And we saw this bottle because we were talking about some of the new brands coming out, and she helped me out so much because she told me of some of the other distilleries that were coming online. And then she told me about this particular brand, Limavady, which there's not a distillery yet, but it is mentioned in this book. And that's why I say distillery projects, because Daryl McNally, who was at Bushmills for 17 years or so, then went to Dublin Liberties, ended up, now he is back doing his own thing at Limavady, which is a town that had a distilling heritage that probably goes back before 1750, but 1750 is really the date that he points to. And I love the bottle, even though I do a video actually on how to get into this bottle, because it's not the easiest one in the world to get into, but you learn to push it up like that and it comes off pretty easily. This is one of the most fascinating whiskeys I've tasted. It is, this one is caramel on the nose, some peach on the nose. The grain notes come through as well. Little nuttiness. Cheers. You knew I was going to have to drink something here. Toasted grain, man. It is just that graham cracker. It's fascinating. I've been through a bottle of this already. It's about $50 a bottle. It is a single malt. If you are a single malt fan and you're trying to relate this to any Scotch whiskey region, I can't give it to you, man. This is so different. This is a taste profile all of its own. Graham cracker, lemon, and then maybe a little grapefruit in there, and just a really nice toffee going on there as well. And this is actually aged in bourbon barrels and PX sherry casks, and it is triple distilled, but it has a really nice mouthfeel to it. So I'm really happy with that whiskey. And I tell you what, all the whiskeys I'm talking about today, I will probably have in my cabinet from here on out, because I just think they are all really, really nice whiskeys. And the last whiskey that I'm going to jump into is a whiskey that once I left Belfast and headed past where Limavady is going to be, and Derry, while I was in Derry, I did a walking tour of the town. That was really cool. And then I headed out to Donegal. And while I was in Donegal, that's when I went to and this is one you're going to have to learn, because in terms of the name, it may throw you a bit. Ardara is the name of the town, and that is the name of the distillery, Ardara. And Slieve League is going to be one of the types of whiskey that they make, and it's also the tallest cliff in Europe, and it's not far from there. And the whiskey that comes from them is silky. And I just did an interview with James from Ardara, and this is a distillery that is going to only make peated whiskeys. And there are two distilleries in Ireland who are now going 100% towards, as they call it, turf whiskeys. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. This is just a really nice smoky whiskey, and different from, again, what you might expect out of an Islay whiskey. It's not a medicinal, that iodine is not there. This is going to be a little bit more of your kind of campfire smoke that you're going to get out of that. So breaking down stereotypes, which is all the thing I learned in researching and writing this book, is that Ireland is not what you think it is. The idea that everything's triple distilled and smooth, That is not the case. There is a wide variety of distilleries, as you can tell by the second half of this book. There are a lot of distilleries there, and from north to south, a wide variety of styles. So if you'd like to get a copy of the book, I'm telling you what, if you don't know anything about Irish whiskey, or you're just starting to learn about Irish whiskey, for $20 you'll have it all down. You'll have a really good sense. In fact, you'll be smarter on the industry than probably most people in the industry, because when I did these travels around, I said, you know, this is amazing, and I feel like I'm the first person to do this kind of a trek. And they said, first American to do it. And they said, I think you're the first person to do it, because even within the Irish Whiskey Association, they hadn't really gotten around to all the distilleries. And I got the ones that are there and some that are almost there, and also talked with the owners of some that are on their way. So you will know the Irish whiskey industry inside and out as it stands right now from getting this book, and you will be able to learn how to plan your own trip to Ireland. Some people might be a little nervous about doing that, international travel, all that sort of stuff, but I will ease a lot of those fears, even give a travel checklist in there, all sorts of stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Are you guys, where is your dream country to go to for whiskey? Where would you love to, what book should I work on next? Or do you like the books that I've already got, Kentucky and Ireland? Be really interesting to know. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments. Give me a like if you enjoyed the video, if you learned something along the way. And I'm going to sit here and enjoy my Limavady. Until next time, cheers and Slane. They're even redefining single malt. Really interesting whiskey.